I don't know what we're going to do in the West about energy. The EU seems intent on continuing to alienate Russia, trying to shut off not only Russian oil, but natural gas, which they need. The price of natural gas keeps going up consistently. European countries are planning just to use less natural gas. They have nothing to replace it with, so they're just going to consume less energy, which means effectively that they will be having national blackouts to where I assume certain days maybe they'll cut down on the work week. Maybe they'll go from a 5-day work week to a 4-day work week. Maybe they will turn off electricity for residential customers during certain hours of the day. Anything to try and reduce the level of energy consumption in their countries, because there's going to be less energy to go around. We here in the United States are going to suffer from the same problem, because the Europeans expect to replace their Russian natural gas with American natural gas. We here in America, however, are not exploring for new natural resources. We're not trying to extract more oil and gas out of the earth. And so if we're exporting more to Europe, that means less for us. At the same time, our regime is imposing a $7,500 subsidy on electric vehicles because they're doing everything they can to outlaw gasoline-powered vehicles, as I talked about yesterday. But just like with all government subsidies, they just make prices go higher. On the same time now as Biden is passing the $7,500 subsidy for electric cars, Ford is raising the price of their electric cars by $8,500, even more than the amount of the subsidy. But that's what you can expect from government subsidizing inefficient products. And so even if magically everyone in America was able to get a hold of an electric car, which is not feasible, how would we get the electricity to power those cars? Well, if you live in Florida, like I do, the answer is natural gas. Vast majority of our electricity is generated from burning natural gas. Natural gas which we will now be exporting to Europe. And so electricity prices where I live, and I assume in many other parts of the country, will necessarily skyrocket via a combination of the government and the banks and the Great Reset elite discouraging oil and gas exploration and production, the promotion of electric cars, and the alienation of Russian energy. Those three factors will lead to significantly reduced supply of energy. And with less energy, you have less economy. We necessarily will go into a depression and never come out. We cannot have, and by we I mean the entirety of the West, Western Europe and North America, and throw in Australia and New Zealand, as well, because they follow along with what the rest of us do. In fact, in many cases, like with the lockdowns, they're far, far worse. All of these countries are discouraging energy production. They're going headlong into trying to utilize the least efficient sources of energy. And so the lifestyle that we have become accustomed to simply will not exist. This is what you will own nothing and be happy looks like. This is what they were trying to prepare us for. Over the course of the next couple of years, it looks like, they're going to try and completely wean us off of affordable energy. And so the reason why you will own nothing is because there simply will not be enough stuff to go around. We can't produce things anymore. You will live in a Stalinist apartment block that looks the same as all the other Stalinist apartment blocks at 1234 Karl Marx Prospect, Unit 666. There's no other conclusion that can be drawn here. The numbers don't add up. You can't take away energy and not replace it with anything. We're certainly not going to replace it with, windmills and solar panels. If you look at, the massive amount of solar panels that exist on one of these so-called solar farms that we have here in Florida, because Florida, we have a lot of sunlight. The amount of power you get versus the surface area of those solar panels, it's infinite. It's infinitesimal. It's minute. Even if solar panels were feasible, the regime would be against them, because if everyone had their own solar panels on their house and they generated their own electricity, they wouldn't be plugged into the grid and they wouldn't be as controllable. The government couldn't turn off your electricity then. So, and they wouldn't be able to tax it. They wouldn't want you to have your own source of energy. So, that's kind of how you can tell that when you see the government pushing solar panels, that they don't actually work. Because if they did work, they would be doing everything that they could to suppress solar panels, because that would make us independent, more independent of the system, and we wouldn't have to worry so much about, Europe throwing a temper tantrum and wanting to buy all of their oil and all of their gas from us instead of the Ruskies. And again, even if they were viable, we can't get those in the next 2 months. We're going to have to close up shop. That's the future that we're looking at. Degrowth is here. You're witnessing the suicide of the West in real time, and it's not just the cultural suicide that people usually talk about. This is the West smothering its own economy, destroying its citizens' standards of living. And could we recover? Sure, yeah, we could recover, because this is a defeat by choice. We are not, falling and slipping away and collapsing, in the traditional sense. Our own leaders are trying to choke us out. And so the only way for the West to escape this would be to get rid of these people. But that's not going to happen. Not before the collapse, at least. I think that they believe they can manage the collapse and use it to increase their power. I think that is a miscalculation. I think that they will squander their power by collapsing the system. But we'll just have to see about that, won't we? Frankly, they're worse than I would have imagined. I wouldn't have thought that they would have had to do this much to directly collapse the global economy, or the Western economy. I mean, directly targeting energy. I mean, that's such an obvious thing. That is the lifeblood of the economy, of any economy. The less energy you have, the less you produce. It's that simple. And I would have thought that the economic collapse would have been a more complicated, a more sort of opaque process that I would have had to unpack. But this is incredibly simple. Now, there's also, complicated elements. There's other parts of the economy that are collapsing for different reasons. But the biggest thing here is energy. Now, yes, energy will get cheaper once demand is crushed, once the economy collapses. But if we still have a legal regime in place that essentially forbids us from using that energy, that forces us to use inefficient forms of energy, we're still going to be poor, because we still will not be able to utilize cheap energy. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.